Coming up on this episode, I talk about feeling underappreciated and kind of the thought process that I had when I got overwhelmed by feeling underappreciated, and just kind of how my mind played out after and how it changed how I thought about things going forward. Because it was, I think, a key trigger point for me when it was just realizing my battles with the feeling of just being underappreciated or feeling underappreciated. But it's an interesting one to think about, and it's one I think a lot of people have probably gone through in their life at one time or another. So let's go break it down. What's going on, beautiful people? This is the Perspective Chasers podcast, and I'm your host, John. On this episode, I'm thinking about that feeling of being underappreciated. And this is something that I've battled a few times in my life, but there was a few realizations that kind of made me change how I thought about it. So, first of all, you've got to ask yourself, what do you do for others for them to show you appreciation? And that might be a difficult question because it's hard to kind of face what you do for, we like to think that what we do for other people is the be all and end all, but it's not really the case. And sometimes we don't do things for other people. So if your existence isn't benefiting everybody else, why is anybody going to show you appreciation for existing? And that, at least for me, is kind of like a tough realization, but an important one, because once you realize that you can be appreciated, but all that you do really and truly just benefits your own survival. So nobody's just going to appreciate you for being you, or if they do, they're your friends, this, that, and everything else. But even still, there's a limit to the level of appreciation they'll show you or the amount they'll engage with you. Whereas if, everybody wants to be needed or wanted, and I think this kind of plays into that. So when you feel like you're underappreciated, if we was to dial the clock back to hunter-gatherers and if you achieved something and the tribe didn't appreciate it, you're a lot less inclined to do that thing again or put in effort for the tribe, and eventually your loyalty fades. Well, the same thing's still going to happen with us now. If you don't feel that you've been valued or your efforts have been valued, then you'll eventually stop putting in the effort. But the thing is, we do that to ourselves. Because most of us are living life for us. So really and truly, the only ones that should appreciate us and our existence is ourselves. It's not until, really and truly, your existence benefits other people that you kind of feel that value. I guess that's why parenthood or opening a business or having any kind of situation where others depend on you tends to bring people a lot of value and a lot of feeling of accomplishment. Because again, it's that feeling of being needed or wanted. But then that's also different to feeling appreciated. Because you can feel needed or wanted, but then you can feel taken for granted. And I know there's been times in my life where I've been taken advantage of or been taken for granted, and I've taken advantage of people or taken them for granted. It happens time and time again, but again, it's more about if you eventually learn. And the more I think about these types of situations, and me personally, I do want to be appreciated in life. I don't just want to exist in a little solitary bubble and just go about my life. I like community, I like engaging with people, this, that, and everything else. I like to feel like I'm valuable. But then, if I think that I'm being of value, but then that feeling isn't reciprocated, I'm going to stop putting in that effort, and that relationship or that friendship or that business or whatever else is going to diminish over time. So that feeling appreciated is obviously important. At least I know it is to me. But then you've got to rationalize what you're doing. So that's when you've got to start breaking down your own things. And that's where the flip side of things come in, because obviously, like I just said, when you're a parent or when you've got a business, when you've got people that depend on you, you expect to feel appreciated because you're doing something for somebody else. But at the same time, you're very much doing that for yourself. You're doing that because you feel good, or you don't want a guilty conscience, or living vicariously through others, or whatever other means it is. There's more to it than, often anyway, than just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like, take parenthood, for example. Like, raising a kid and being a good parent and da 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 da. You do that, yes, because it's a good thing to do, but then you also, in the background, hope that that kid will one day care for you once you get old and you can't provide no more, and they go out and they're a good person in the world and they help other people, and they don't tarnish your name or make you look bad or embarrass you or whatever it is. They don't, like, you want the best for them, for themselves, but also for yourself. And that's that kind of selfish aspect of kind of any kind of providing, where like when you provide something, you obviously feel good about that, so therefore you want to do it again. But then where's the line where you're doing it for the release of endorphins and everything else over doing the good act itself, like for somebody's benefit? Like, maybe there are people that like just give for the sake of giving, and then they have to keep giving more or doing bigger things for people to feel that same level of appreciation. But for me, on my journey and my realization, it was more realizing that primarily most of my existence is lived for me. Even when I'm being a good dad, that's for me. When I'm working hard and trying to do whatever else, that's also for me, because it's to improve my life. And don't get me wrong, I do it for other people, my little one, and building life up, building my friends up, and wanting to enjoy life. But again, I'm still at that center core of that. So when you keep looking at like most of your actions have you in mind, really, do you have anything to be, or is there anything for others to appreciate you for? Because realistically, you're not acting selflessly because you benefit. So that kind of sent me down a rabbit hole, and it changed how I thought about appreciation and how I approached it as well. Like, I kind of accepted that my existence benefits very few people, and those that it does benefit, it benefits in a very limited way. And those benefits also benefit myself. So realistically, there's no appreciation to expect there, or no reciprocation of anything, because I'm doing it for myself inevitably. So that I've already been paid in full by experiencing that kind of release of endorphins myself. So it really kind of, don't get me wrong, it was difficult to kind of sit with and be like, rah, like my existence doesn't benefit anybody but me. Like, if I'm being overly freaking brutal with myself and everything else, like, no matter what company I worked for or what I was doing at the time, it would go on without me. Even parenthood, do you know what I mean? Like, my daughter has a mum that would be able to carry on without me. Even if anything happened there would be a situation in which there's adoptive parents or foster parents, or, again, not ideal situations necessarily, but it still goes on. It wouldn't go on John's way, but the world would still go on. The world would still turn. So realistically, what impact am I having? What is there of my existence to be appreciated? And don't get me wrong, there are little things. I'm not beating myself up in that sense. There's loads of things that I appreciate myself for. But again, I have to appreciate myself for, or appreciate the people around me. I suppose there's a few instances where I could say I've done things completely selflessly or whatever else. But then at the same time, I was probably bored, so it offered me some form of entertainment at the time. See, then I benefit. Sitting with these thoughts and just thinking like, well, the do I have the reasons to be sitting here feeling bad about nobody appreciating me when really the only person that I should expect appreciation from is myself? And then that kind of started that whole domino effect of looking closer to home and thinking, like, okay, cool, well, what do I do in my day-to-day life and who do I benefit and why? And just going down that train of thought, I adjusted how I treated some relationships in my life, how I approached certain things, how I thought about myself and appreciation and all of that. And like I say, it was a difficult kind of thought process and difficult conversation with myself at times. And it wasn't straight on the up and up. It was like a lot of like self-degradation and putting myself down and beating myself up and saying like, well, okay, cool, if nobody is appreciating you, then why not? And why ain't you been doing something? And then it was, well, I thought I had been and da 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 da. But that's the whole thing of like, I suppose I was acting from a point of ignorance or naivety. And it was, well, if I was oblivious to the fact that my existence only really benefited myself, then I was, of course, I'd kind of get stuck in that loop of expecting to be appreciated because I'm putting in a lot of effort, but then I'm not seeing the reward, but then I'm taking the reward so instantly, there's no, it's like a paper cup reference. Like if you used to poke a hole in the bottom of a cup and then it would slowly drip out the other end, and that kind of retention of water as it slowly goes through the hole, that kind of retention would be like the appreciation that you notice. Well, I had a hole that was taking that appreciation out of the cup as quickly as it was going in because I was only living for myself. And that there was for various reasons. Like I would always try to kind of be realistic and play things out and rationalize things. So like when I think back to those times and say like I was living for myself, I was building myself up from a point where I wasn't great financially. Like my family didn't come from money. It was a case of like grind and get yourself somewhere, build yourself up and essentially learn to swim in life because nobody was there to help me and nobody was there for me to lean on. So I had to help myself and I had to put in that extra effort and double down, and some things I learned the hard way and done things wrong for a little while before I learned the lesson. And that's okay, but eventually I learned those lessons. And this lesson of appreciation and when to be appreciated and why to feel like that and when to feel like that, that was an important one. And it took a while to learn, but it was a valuable one. And it's something, even now I remind myself of when I am having a low time and I'm feeling a little bit disconnected, like my existence doesn't benefit anybody. Then I go down that train of thought of, well, okay, but does existence have to benefit somebody, even yourself? Like, can you not just be in the moment and exist? Is that not beautiful and peaceful and an experience in itself to just be in the moment? Like the other day I drove down to the coast and was literally just jumped in the sea and swimming about and was just no phone, didn't even have my glasses on, so I could barely actually see the world around me. And I was just there floating in the water. Like at this precise moment, I'm connected to a body of water that travels all the way around the world, and there's so much life that is coexisting in that body of water that I'm in, and everything was connected at that time and da 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 da. But how much of it was I unaware of? Like how much of that ocean was aware that John jumped in it? Very little. It's the same with life. Like in the ocean of life, how many people was aware when I jumped in and I was born? Not many people. So my existence didn't affect many people. It didn't have a domino effect on any people. These days, we fast forward 30 years and we've got the internet. You can instantly send videos around the world, messages around the world. You can use AI to create things that no human has. Well, hey, that's a complicated one because it's a lot of like interpretation and there's limits on how much we actually know about what AI is out there and what AI is capable of and everything else. But it's a whole new variable of processing information, and that humans don't have to fully kind of walk through every step of, like, they can give it a command and set it off. Like, that's dangerous territory. To dial it back, like, even as a parent. So, like, it's nice when you send your little one off with a little task and they accomplish it and they come back and, like, they've got that little sense of accomplishment, and then you're proud of them, and it's like, oh, it's just a sweet moment. But then when you look at that with, like, AI, you kind of take away. I don't know if you do actually. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But to me, I think you kind of take away that innocence of it, that kind of that sweetness of it, like that sense of accomplishment. Like, I don't know if AI would come back after doing a task and have a sense of accomplishment, or just a kind of logistical algorithm or whatever saying, like, mission accomplished, and that's enough. Like, but then, as the person that set that domino off and set it in motion, would they feel that a sense of accomplishment the same as a parent would when a child come back having accomplished a task? It's an interesting train of thought, but it would send me on a massive tangent. But the thing is, like, inevitably, that's like that's part of that learning process when you accomplish things and you get that reward process, and that's a fascinating thing to see. So when you see that potentially playing out in other ways, it's like even playing like fetch with your dog or whatever. Like, a cat catches a spider, and, like, they have that sense of accomplishment. You can see that kind of like smugness to them. We all kind of have that amongst the kind of, let's say, organic world, for lack of a better way of saying it these days. And it's just one of those ones where, like, the the kind of self-appreciation for anything in that moment, like that sense of accomplishment, is that sense of appreciation. And it's like, yeah, I did this, da 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 da, and then, like, the dog will come back with a chew toy or a ball or whatever. I was like, yeah, I got it, I found it, da da da. Or your kid will come back with the thing that they found or that you asked them to go get or do or whatever. Like, oh, look, I done it, mummy, daddy, da 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 da, great. Or whatever it is, like, it plays out in so many ways, but it's that little seed of accomplishment. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it's fascinating. But again, like, to get back on track, like, they're all very internal things or very personal things. So there's very few people whose existence does benefit other people, and it has its limits and everything else. So then we have to constantly question, truthfully, like, how much does our existence benefit other people, and like, how much are we living for ourselves compared to living for others? And it's not to say you have to live completely selflessly, but again, it's, if you're struggling with that feeling of feeling underappreciated and everything else, that's when you have to ask yourself those questions of, am I doing stuff to be appreciated for? Are these feelings, damn it, I've lost my words. Do these feelings have their place? Is it called for lack of a better way of saying it at the minute? Or is it just one of those things where it's uncalled for and just completely misplaced? But you have to sit down and have those thoughts. And unless you're willing to have those awkward conversations, you're not going to have those realizations within yourself. So if you are struggling with feeling underappreciated and this, that, and everything else in your life, ask yourself if you're contributing enough and who your existence benefits in that. And if the answer is you're doing everything for everyone and there should be appreciation, I'll come back. The whole thing is a different problem of, you need to show people your expectations of them, and that it's not, you're not going to be taken for granted, and that you want to be appreciated. And that is a whole different thing to mediate. But you have to first start with the questions yourself before you take that to people and be like, look, like, you don't appreciate me enough, da da da. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's right, but you don't do anything to be appreciated. And that's a harsh truth sometimes, but that's a valuable conversation that sometimes needs to happen. So take the time to have those awkward conversations, but take the time to do the work before you get there and ask yourself the awkward questions. Because as well, once you've had those awkward conversations with yourself, you kind of know where your bearings are and where you're heading when you have those awkward conversations with other people. So you can kind of mediate it and see that, okay, cool, I was coming from here, I see you coming from there. But again, it all starts with having that conversation with yourself. And that will go for any feeling, good or bad. Like, when you sit with it and you ask yourself why you're having those feelings, are they called for or are they misplaced? That's when you'll realize all of the kind of backlog behind it. And okay, cool, this is why I'm feeling exhausted, because I've been running on X amount of sleep for days now and I'm constantly sleep deprived, or I'm nutrition deprived, or I'm people deprived, whatever it is. Like, most of the time, if you stop and just do a little backlog and look back over like what's been going on, you can see there's a quite clear cause and effect. So just take that time and look for it, because more often than not, you'll find the answers that you're looking for. They might not be the ones you wanted, but there'll be answers that you need. If you look for them, they're there, like anything. I seen an interesting thing about like mathematics and science the other day, and they were saying that he asked this mathematician a question of, do you think that you're inventing mathematics or discovering it? And he said, in short, discovering. Like, it's always there just for us to discover and realize. And I think that's like a lot of life. So there are good experiences, bad experiences, beauty and ugly and this, that, and everything else. That's all there to be experienced. It's just what you want to witness, what you want to bring into your existence and everything else, what you want to discover of life. So try to take some time and just think about how your actions are playing out and where life's going. But yeah, I'm going to wrap this episode up because I've got to get on to a busy day. But the seed for this episode is going to be, try to stop making excuses and be spontaneous. Like, there's so many ways in which we can talk ourselves out of things, but just have an effort moment and be spontaneous every now and then. It don't have to be all the time, but every now and then just do something in a spur of the moment you really wanted to do, or that you've been putting off, and live that moment for you, because it's easy for us to get caught up in this repetitive cycle of 9 to 5s and going to the same places, seeing the same people, frequently doing the same things. And every so often it's nice to break out of that cycle and just remind yourself that life has countless variations and possibilities, and that in itself can inspire you, it can invigorate you, it can take life down a whole new path. But again, you have to take that time to put in the effort. So I'll leave it there for this one. All the best, and I'll catch you on the next one.